If you think you already know everything about BTS and their reunion, wait. Because there is one moment inside that GQ interview that the entire world has been talking about, and it didn't come from RM, it didn't come from Jungkook, it didn't come from V. It came from Jimin. And what he said in that room, the way he said it, quietly, honestly, choosing every single word with care, that's what made everyone stop and think. So this is what it actually feels like from the inside. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel is where we talk about BTS seriously, with heart, and without the manufactured drama. And today we are going deep into BTS's March 2026 GQ interview, their first group interview since they announced their hiatus back in 2022, but we're doing it specifically through Jimin's lens. Because there's a lot he said, and there's a lot he showed, that deserves more than one read. So let's start from the beginning. Mid-2025, every single member of BTS has completed their mandatory military service in South Korea. 7 men who once shook the world, who spoke at the United Nations, who broke Billboard records over and over again, who filled stadiums on every continent, finally came back together. Not for a show, not for a press conference, but to actually live under the same roof again, in one house in Los Angeles, for 2 full months. And Jimin was there, with all of them. What's interesting is that in this GQ interview, when the topic of military service came up, the part that most people tend to avoid going deep on because it genuinely was hard, Jimin didn't flinch. He answered immediately, in that very specific way that is so purely Jimin. Honest, a little dramatic, but always landing somewhere warm. He said, with an expression that made everyone in the room laugh and feel something at the same time. It was so hard I was going to cry. And he wasn't just saying it. He physically mimicked crying, while laughing. That's Jimin. Always able to take something heavy and make it bearable, without making it smaller than it actually was. But the line that came right after that is the one that really matters. He said, it was very challenging, but being able to be in those shoes and experiencing that meant a lot to us. If you're new to listening to Jimin speak, that might sound like a standard answer. But if you've followed BTS for any amount of time, you know that Jimin never says something meant a lot unless it genuinely changed something in him. He doesn't throw that phrase around lightly, and he chose those words in one of the most high-profile interviews BTS has done in years, on the cover of GQ across 15 countries simultaneously, with full intention. Now let's get to the moment that got quoted the most. The moment that immediately trended on Twitter. The moment that became a screenshot shared thousands of times within hours of the article dropping. And that's when the subject of RM's Weverse livestream came up. If you need the context, back in December 2025, RM went live on Weverse and said something that sent the entire fandom into a spiral. He admitted, very openly, almost painfully openly, that he had thought about disbanding BTS thousands of times leading up to the comeback. He said he couldn't sleep. He said the pressure was enormous. He even mentioned that he had thought about getting a prescription for sleeping pills. The live stream traveled everywhere. ARMY panicked. Every major media outlet picked it up. So when GQ sat down with all 7 members and asked them, how did it feel to watch RM say that, the answers they each gave were completely different. Jin said he didn't even watch the live stream. V said they only saw short clips on YouTube Shorts. Suga explained that it just feels strange to watch each other's live streams because they're always together anyway, and they're basically brothers. But Jimin gave a completely different kind of answer. He said, I think it's RM's love language to ARMY in a way. It really shows how emotionally invested he is in the group, and in ARMY as well. I think it was very RM to be vulnerable and say things like that. That one statement does so much work. It's not just about RM. It's about how Jimin sees his group, how he reads other people's emotions, how he doesn't judge, doesn't panic, doesn't turn something painful into a bigger crisis, but instead receives it as something human, even as something loving. He reframed what most people saw as a crisis moment as an act of care. And he did it naturally, without trying to spin anything. That's not media training. That's just who Jimin is. When RM heard Jimin say that, he visibly lit up. He said, how sweet, looking around at all 6 of the others. And you can see it right there, in that small, almost quiet moment, exactly how deep this bond actually goes. But this GQ interview isn't just full of emotionally heavy moments. There's also the Jimin that every ARMY knows. The one who is effortlessly playful. the one who becomes the center of a room without even trying. GQ journalist Raymond Ong documented one moment that happened right in the middle of the interview, something that didn't make it into any of the shorter recaps, but is right there in the full March 2026 GQ feature. In the middle of a pretty serious conversation about pressure and comeback expectations, Jimin suddenly, with absolutely no build-up, no warning, took off his jacket. And underneath that jacket, he was wearing a fitted ribbed tank top that was doing a lot of heavy lifting against his very clearly toned arms and torso. Jungkook immediately shouted, "Sexy." And Jimin, of course, fully leaned into it. He started flexing, pinching his biceps, grinning that grin that belongs only to him, the one that nobody in the world can replicate. And within about 3 seconds, the entire room that had been deep in philosophical territory was now just laughing uncontrollably. That's Jimin too. He knows exactly when to be serious. He knows exactly when to be honest. And he knows precisely when to break the tension in a way that nobody else in that room could pull off. Now here's a moment from the GQ interview that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention. And it's actually one of the most revealing things Jimin said in the entire piece. It's about how BTS supports each other when things get genuinely hard. When the interviewer asked how the members console one another during moments of pressure or grief, Jimin was completely direct. He said, "We're not the type that consoles each other, but we just laugh and make fun of the person to make him laugh and forget about it. We also had some drinks together. Booze always works." That last line immediately became a meme. And yeah, it's funny, but sit with what he's actually saying for a second. These are 7 grown men who have been together for over a decade, who have experienced a level of pressure that most people on this planet will never come close to understanding, who have been through the peak of their careers, a public hiatus, mandatory military service, and now the most anticipated comeback in K-pop history. And the way they get through it, not expensive therapy, not carefully crafted team-building exercises. They make fun of each other until whoever was struggling starts laughing again. They pour some drinks. They be brothers. V added to that moment with something quietly devastating. Although we make fun of him in the front, in the back we're crying too. Meaning behind all the laughter, they're all carrying it. They're all scared. They all feel it. They just choose to feel it together rather than alone. And Jimin is right at the center of that dynamic. He's the one feeling everything deeply, holding everyone together, and making sure nobody drowns in it. And I think that's something people consistently underestimate about Jimin, especially in the West, where his name tends to come up mostly in conversations about his dancing or his abs or his solo music. People see the performance, and they miss the person doing the performing. They see the polish, and they miss the work that went into creating it. But if you pay attention to every interview BTS has ever done as a group, not just this GQ piece, but going all the way back, Jimin is almost always the one who translates. Not linguistically, emotionally. He's the one who takes what someone else said that landed awkwardly and finds the kinder version of it. He's the one who fills silences not with noise but with warmth. He's the one who, when another member looks even slightly off, will reach over and touch their arm or crack a joke just loud enough to shift the energy in the room. It's a skill that doesn't have a formal name. Some people might call it emotional intelligence. Some might call it empathy. But in practice, what it looks like is Jimin watching RM get vulnerable on a Weverse livestream. A livestream that scared millions of fans, and his first instinct being not to panic, not to distance himself, but to say, that's his love language. That's how he loves us. That response alone should tell you everything about why this reunion is going to work. Because when you have someone in your corner who can do that, who can look at fear and call it love, who can look at a breakdown and see devotion, that group is not going to fall apart. That group has something most bands, most companies, most teams in any industry would spend millions trying to manufacture. And BTS just has it naturally. In a 5 feet 9 inches guy from Busan, who used to be a contemporary dance major and somehow became one of the most recognizable humans on the planet. The thing about Jimin is that he never seems to forget where he came from or why he does this. And in a world where fame tends to hollow people out, that kind of rootedness is rare. It's the reason his words in GQ hit different from anyone else's. It's the reason that interview feels like something you want to return to long after the hype around the album has settled. Now let's talk about something that connects directly back to everything Jimin said in GQ, his contribution to the album itself. Arirang, BTS's fifth studio album dropping March 20th, 2026, has 14 tracks. And Jimin has writing credits on 2 of them. One of those tracks is called They Don't Know About Us, which has already been generating massive conversation just based on the title. The other is the closing track on the album. 2 writing credits on an album made alongside producers like Kevin Parker from Tame Impala, Flume, and Shpeg Mafia. That is not a small thing. And when you go back and reread everything Jimin said in GQ about how much the military service meant to him personally, about how he reads RM's vulnerability as love, about how he uses humor to carry the people around him through hard things, you start to understand what he brought into that recording studio during those 2 months in LA. You start to understand the emotional weight he was carrying when he sat down to write. Jimin has never been just a dancer, has never been just a vocalist with one of the most uniquely distinctive voices in modern pop. He is someone who feels everything at maximum volume and then finds a way to put it somewhere it can be heard. And Arirang, an album named after a centuries-old Korean folk song about separation, distance, and the longing to return, is the perfect place for everything Jimin had been holding since 2022. But here's the part of the Jimin story that a lot of casual viewers tend to skip over, and it matters, because it's the whole reason his words in this GQ interview carry as much weight as they do. While BTS was on hiatus, Jimin didn't disappear. He didn't coast. He went out and proved something. In 2023, he became the first Korean solo artist in history to debut at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 with his single Like Crazy. Not #1 on the K-pop chart. Not #1 in Asia. #1 on the most competitive singles chart in the world. The same chart where the Beatles lived. The same chart where Michael Jackson broke records. Jimin put his name on that list as a solo act. And then right after that historic moment, he went into the military. He didn't get to ride the wave. He didn't get to capitalize on the momentum. He went from the peak of his solo career directly into mandatory service. And he did it without complaint, without bitterness. And when he came out on the other side, the first thing he did was go back to a house in Los Angeles with 6 guys he's been calling brothers since they were teenagers. Think about what that says about him. Think about what it means that someone who had just proven he could make it on his own, completely, undeniably at the highest level, chose to come back. Not because he had to, because he wanted to, because BTS, for Jimin, has never been a cage. It's always been a home. And that context is everything when you hear him in that GQ interview. When he calls RM's vulnerability a love language. When he talks about how the military meant a lot. When he sits in that room and just radiates this quiet, settled kind of peace. Like someone who has been tested, who has been away, and who came back knowing exactly where he belongs. There's also something worth noting about how Jimin carried himself physically during the interview. Every single person who was in that room described the same thing. He was present in a way that's hard to put into words. Not just engaged with the questions, but engaged with the people. He was watching RM when RM spoke. He was reacting to V, to Jean, to Jungkook, not for the camera, but because he was genuinely there. And that kind of presence, after nearly 4 years of living apart, after all of them going through something as isolating as military service, is not something you can fake. The GQ journalist, Raymond Ong, noted that the closeness between the members was both reassuring and hard-won. That phrase, hard-won, is important. These men did not just walk back in and pick up where they left off. They worked for this reunion. They spent months in that LA house grinding through 6-day weeks in the studio. They rebuilt the rhythm of being BTS. And somewhere in all of that, Jimin found a way to be exactly who he is, the emotional compass of the group, the one who feels the most, and somehow uses that to make everyone else feel steadier. There's one more thing from this GQ interview worth addressing, and it gets at something fundamental about the whole reunion. Is BTS stronger together, or stronger apart? That question is the spine of the entire GQ piece. Every member answered it in their own way. V said it outright. We all treasure BTS more than we treasure each one of us separately. Suga went even further, saying that if they can keep this going, maybe they'll still be dancing together at 60. But Jimin didn't answer the question directly. What he did instead was more powerful than any direct answer could have been. He showed it, in the way he talked about RM. In the way he instinctively grabbed Jin's neck during the photo shoot while Jin playfully tapped his leg back. In the way he and Jungkook fed off each other's energy in every single room they were in together. In the way he was fully present, not performing presence, but actually there for every single moment of that interview. Jimin didn't need to say BTS is stronger together. Every sentence he spoke, every move he made, every time he looked at one of the others, all of it was already the answer. And that's the thing I want to leave you with from this video. A lot of people are treating this GQ interview as a big pop culture moment, as proof that BTS is back, that the reunion is real, that Arirang is going to be something historic. And all of that is true. But underneath all of that, there is Jimin, with his careful honesty, his disarming openness, his ability to find the grace in something heavy, reminding us that behind the biggest comeback in music right now, there are 7 actual human beings who are scared, who are tired, who missed each other, and who chose to come back anyway. That's what this GQ interview is really about. Not the records that are going to break, not the stadiums that are going to sell out, but the fact that 7 people who have been carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders can still sit together in a room in Korea, grab each other's necks, laugh until someone cries, and trust that they're going to be okay. And Jimin is right there in the middle of all of it, like he always has been. Arirang drops March 20th, 2026. The BTS live concert at Gwanghwamun Square streams globally on Netflix on March 21st. And the Arirang World Tour, 82 shows across 34 cities in 23 countries, kicks off April 9th. If this video gave you a different way to look at what Jimin said in GQ, drop it in the comments. Tell me the one moment or line from him that hit the hardest. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is the time, because we've still got a lot to cover before March 20th gets here. I'll see you in the next one.